So for those of us who don't know anything about the Paris Agreement, can you explain what it is?
So the Paris Agreement will bring, very much like COP, brings all government delegates together or delegations together. The INDCs will be signed off. The review process will also be signed off, and this will bring together what all the nations agree on will be the global increase in temperature, whether it is the 1.5, which civil society really hopes it is, or the 2 degrees, which is pushing the boundaries quite a lot. And that's global temperature increase. So when they talk about climate change, that would be the variation that takes place. And this agreement will hold nations accountable. There's various, what should you say, like takes on this agreement, whether developed nations should have binding targets and whether developing nations should have non-binding targets. And that means that the binding targets would have ramifications if you did not meet your targets, whereas developing nations wouldn't have those ramifications. So you'd have various, like, you'd have to deal with it specifically. Yeah, so that's what the Paris Agreement is about.
So for somebody who's completely on the outside
Yeah.
of this, I'm going to have to ask you to explain it slowly for me. So does
Yes.
this mean that a country will decide that we are only going to allow our temperature, our climate to increase by a certain degree?
So we all have to, all the nations have to come together and decide on the global temperature increase. But when each country signs on to this agreement, they will say that we have put forward our intended nationally determined goals, and this is how we will affect the change. So, and then it would be stated accordingly. So you have various countries and what they're doing to combat climate change.
That's absolutely fascinating, because we often think that climate change is just this sort of thing that's happening out in the atmosphere, and you know it's going to happen regardless of what we do. But actually, if countries decide to really make a difference about this, we can combat climate change.
And I think that's what's really important about Lima and Paris, is that if there is positive political will, it will make a valuable difference. I mean, but there's various nations that are coal intensive and oil intensive that somewhat push the negotiations where they want to, and there's a lot of skepticism when it comes to the COP negotiations, because it's all the nations coming together trying to agree on one thing, and you know how difficult it is just for people within one country to decide something. Imagine bringing them all together. So trying to find middle ground and to get complete consensus is quite difficult.